This video is brought to you by Squarespace. Have you got some orcs? You want to play a game? Drop some bottle caps onto some nice terrain. Roll some dice and scoot your little gits around. Make a tower of bones. Try not to knock it down. To shoot, you roll more dice, and that's where the bullets go. If you pick a fight, play scissors, paper, stone. Then to loot some shit, pick up the bottle caps. Then you can, damn it, Space Gits, I'm gonna finally be someone. This classical poem by orc philosopher Mike Hutchinson describes not only several ancient truths about life, but also the basic rules for his cool new indie game about space orcs, Space Gits. Recently, I was sent the rulebook for this game by Mike, as well as a nice selection of the models for the game by his collaborator, Cromlech. And today, I'd like to show you how I kit bashed and painted my first few gangs and terrain pieces for the game, as well as my thoughts on the game in general. Part 1. Space Gits. So firstly, huge thank you to Cromlech as well as Mike Hutchinson for sending over all this cool stuff for review. They sent me not only all of the cool stuff for Space Gits, but also some of Cromlech's new Orktober releases, such as these Orc Rocker Boys and their associated Groupie Gits, as well as a banner bearer and some bikes for my orc army because they watched my Stillmania video and wanted to help me out with my orc army. So there was a ton of stuff here, and I don't have time to go through every little sculpt and part in detail, but if you do want to see that, I've got a whole 40-minute long unboxing where I discuss all of the models up for YouTube members as well as over on the Patreon. But for the rest of you, just to summarize, I'm quite impressed in general with all of these sculpts from Cromlech. The sculpts are all really fun and different than something you would get from GW. You've got orcs smoking cigarettes, orcs with bottles of unknown liquid, orcs wearing top hats, orcs wearing chef hats, all kinds of fun little bits for kit bashing your orcs. And the thing I really like about these is that they're all compatible with that old orc boy kit, which, as you know, I have a ton of those. So instead of assembling everything as intended, I cut everything off the sprues and organized them into an organizer for easy kit bashing. And once this was done, I got to work assembling my very first gangs for Space Gits. Part 2. I'm gonna finally be someone. In the basic quick start rules, you only need 3 orcs per player, so I thought a good starting point for getting ready for Space Gits would be to build a few 3-man gangs. And while we of course could use any orcs for this, including ones we already have painted, one of my favorite aspects of this game is that it focuses not on the main orc army, but on the civilians at home and the trouble they get into while the main army is away. For my first gang of 3, I initially set out to make some grill cooks, as I think those are my favorite faction in the game. They're a great example of what this game is about. They're just regular orcs trying to make a living in the city. But during this process, I soon realized that I kind of wanted to keep the chef heads for the future unit of Burna Boys I want to create for my main orc army, to sort of turn the Burna Boys into some barbecue Burna Boys. So instead of making some grill cooks, I set the chef heads aside and I made some regular orc bar patrons. I ended up making this surly looking cowboy guy with a broken bottle, this sports fan orc, and this cool biker dude. We're gonna call this gang the Barflies, as they're just regular lads who like to hang around at the bar and maybe they'll get into a brawl or two. These boys were made using a combination of parts, not just from the Space Gits bundle, but also a pair of legs from the standard Orc Boy kit and some parts from the new Orc Rocker Boys kit that Cromlech sent me, which I believe were just released on their website for Orktober. The links to all this stuff is in the description if you're interested. Coincidentally, this is relevant as one of the other civilian factions for Space Gits is called Git Rock. So the Rocket Boys are perfect for that, and I thought that would be the next gang that I would bash up is 3 orc musicians who are off duty for the night. But do you know what else orcs like to do when they're off duty for the night? That's right, it's bashing together a website using this video's sponsor, Squarespace. Squarespace is the all-in-one website and hosting platform for all of your orc website needs. I've been using it for a little bit over a decade now, and it's super easy to set up and maintain. My advice is to start with one of their templates and then customize it to your heart's content using their extremely intuitive drag and drop system. You don't need to know how to code or anything like that. It's a very intuitive way to make a website. For my current website, I've been using it to host a gallery of my painted miniatures, and I've been currently just trying to update all of the new orcs I've been painting. I've also got all of my reference documents up there. I've got my online store, which is super easy to use. It's got all the payment options you would want built in. So no matter what kind of website you're looking for, if you need a website, why not check out squarespace.com today for a free trial. And then when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/Dana Howl for 10% off your very first purchase of a website or domain. And now back to our video. And if you were curious, when I talk about the factions for Space Gits, it's really more of a thematic thing. When you build a gang, you can pick whichever faction you want as long as you think it fits. There's about 10 factions, I believe, in the core rules. And all that changes is you just get one special rule, which you can apply to your army. So it's really easy to keep track of. Once I was done building my Rocket Boys, the next thing I wanted to build was Officer Crump, who is the exclusive miniature for the Kickstarter. I'm not here to promote the Kickstarter that happened back in March. I think a lot of this stuff you can still get from Cromlech, but Officer Crump, he's the one special Git. You had to be there to promote the Kickstarter, to help fund the Kickstarter if you wanted to get Officer Crump. But yeah, anyway, I just wanted to build him as a standard war boss for my larger orc army. I like that he looks like Judge Dredd, and there's actually a whole faction in Space Gits which is based on the judges, and they're called the Fuzz. You can tell there's a lot of Mega City 1 Judge Dredd kind of flavor leaking over into this game, even though it's about orcs. Next, I built 3 of what I think are my new favorite orc boys. These are the 3 City Boys, which is the faction of rich orc capitalists. I just think they're neat. So these were a lot of fun to make. As you can see, I mostly used the bits from Cromlech, but I mixed in some orc bits I already owned. Everything is pretty cross-compatible and easy to swap between. I also built the orc banner bearer that they sent me to use in my larger orc army, probably as a knob with banner. It's a Legends unit, but we play Crusade, so we're allowed to use Legends units to play Crusade. It's pretty cool. But before we paint these guys, I also wanted to try out building a proper gang using the full rules in the official rulebook, just to show you what you're getting into, but also because it seemed like a fun kit bashing challenge. So for my final gang, I used the Chaos mode gang generator in the official rulebook, which just gives you a random warband. It makes it as random as possible, and then it becomes this kind of fun kit bashing challenge where you can sort of try and match the stats you have to the models you have. Using this generator, you could end up with orcs, goblins, snotlings, squigs, knobs, or even clank bots. I rolled 3 orcs and a clank bot, for instance, and then you roll up 2 pieces of random equipment for each guy, as well as a diagnosis and a treatment, which usually involves the orc doctor replacing your body part with some sort of tank tread or claw or something. And yeah, I found this was one of the most fun parts of the game for me. If I was to play this in more of a campaign mode, I would definitely want to start with the chaos mode generator for each player. It was a really fun kit bashing challenge in the same way that you might take like a set of writing prompts to write some short stories. This system gives you randomized kit bashing prompts, which I think ends up with some pretty cool orcs and goblins. Once again, I'm not going to go into huge detail here about how every single part that I used for kit bashing this gang, but I'll probably upload my kit bashing journal for this once again to YouTube members and the patrons, because it's not something that's interesting enough to put on the main channel, but if you like that sort of rambly stuff, you can get it over there. Finally, with all of our Gits assembled, I now had 3 main gangs, 1 chaos mode gang, as well as some characters just to paint for fun. Oh, and also all of the orc scatter terrain that Cromlech sent me. Did I not mention that? There's a whole bunch of terrain for Space Gits as well, which again is optional. You can use whatever terrain you want. But just because it's cool, let me tell you about the terrain rules. There's a lot of cool terrain rules. These are exploding barrels. You kind of know what these do. These are vending machines where you can insert a cap and you get a random item. This is the teleportaloo, which I think if you translate that into North American English, it's a porta potty. Get it? It transports you to a random place on the board. When you flush it, teleports you. But anyway, with all of our models assembled, it's finally time to start painting. For painting all this stuff, I started out with these same basic steps as I give the rest of my orc army, and I slowly deviated as the process went on. So I started out by priming with black, giving everything an overspray with Pro-Acryl Mahogany to give it that rusty metal look, and then spraying everything from below with Pro-Acryl Jade to match the basing on the rest of my orc army. I then picked out a few areas carefully with a spray of bold titanium white, pretty much anywhere I wanted to have a bit of a glowing look, any light bulbs, things like that, the interiors of the vending machines. And then I sprayed lime green over top of these areas to give things a greenish yellow glow. I also sprayed small amounts of this bright yellow-green onto all of the orcs' bases at this point and to all the bases of the terrain just to give a little bit of variety and a fungal glow to everything. And honestly, at this point, things look pretty good. This looks like a pretty solid Space Gits starter set. You could probably play with just these primed models. And from here, I dry brushed any metallic areas with a few random metallic paints. I try to vary up the different metallics on my orcs to make it look all scrappy and kit bashed. And after this, I went to town painting each Git's skin using tons of different colors. In most cases, I start with a base tone of red, magenta, purple, something like that, and then I will layer up on top of that with various greens from my collection. I try to use every green I own. Like, why not? I barely use green for anything else. For the rest of the colors on each of the gangs, I wanted these orcs to look slightly different than my main army, as none of these guys are part of that main army. They might get conscripted into it, but I don't want them to be wearing like uniforms like my regular orcs are. So I tried to be a bit more sparse with bright colors here than I usually would be on the main army, trying to mostly let those greens and turquoises stand out and complementing them with bits of yellow or ochre, darker red, ivories, and rusty browns. I did the same thing with the terrain using the same set of colors and adding lots of rust into the metal to give some variety, and I added a few other accent colors into the mix here or there. I especially had fun adding little details to the orc vending machines. The way I did this, I started out by using transparent paints to make sure everything still has that lime green glow. And then I added any freehand stuff that I wanted to suggest certain brand names in the vending machine. And after many, many hours of painting, here's what I was able to accomplish. I'm really proud to say that I have now completed 50 orc models since last Orktober. or closer to 60 if you want to count all of the orcs piloting the various vehicles, or closer to 70 if you count the various terrain pieces as well. And by drafting all of these civilians and reorganizing everyone into units for the larger army, we've got a list of about 1350 points for my larger Orc 40k army, which is a huge increase from last year's, 650 points? So we've pretty much doubled the amount of orcs we had since last year. That's pretty good for me. I was hoping to get to 2,000 points by this Orktober, but I think we still did pretty good. This is still my largest standing army that I currently own in terms of model count and in terms of point counts, I believe. And I really like that we can use these as gangs for Space Gits and also as individual units for Warhammer 40k. So with that said, thank you so much for watching today. I hope you have a wonderful Orktober. Maybe you consider painting some orcs of your very own if you haven't already. Thank you as always to all of our wonderful patrons and YouTube members for your ongoing support. It really means a lot. And I will see you in the next video.